Hey, it's Les from the TV Dudes. This week, I'm excited to bring you my interview with singer Christina Bianco. Christina's been all over Broadway, all over the world, and on your TV singing songs for RuPaul's Drag Race. But she's about to move to London, and before she goes, she's doing a two-night show at New York's Birdland Theater, October 15th and 16th, Friday and Saturday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. The show's called A Lot to Unpack, and if you've ever seen Christina, you have an idea what you're in for. From stage to screen, she's known for her singular voice and comedic charm, and has found YouTube sensation with her diva impression videos, gaining over 25 million views. She's the girl of 1,000 voices, and we discuss how she found her own voice by imitating other people, what makes a song sound right when a certain singer sings it, how Dora the Explorer helped her get her career start, and much more. It's a really fun interview, and I was so glad to get to discuss so much of her career. I hope you enjoy, and if you're in the New York area, check out the show. Hi, Christina.
Yes, hi.
Hi, this is Les from the TV Dudes.
Hey, nice to chat with you.
Yes, thank you so much for making time today. I really appreciate it.
No problem at all. Can you hear me okay? I've got my little headset in.
I can. It sounds fine.
Great. And you might hear my dog whimper a little bit, but that's just Jeffrey saying hello.
Yeah, I had to take a couple of minutes earlier and lure my dog out of my office. He decided he did not want to leave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, we live in a studio apartment, and it's a fantastic location, but my goodness, it does make escaping the dog and other house noises a little more difficult.
And so, if you don't mind, we'll just roll right into it. As I understand it,
Sure.
you'll be saying goodbye to that studio apartment pretty soon. You are moving to London, is that correct?
I am, yes. Me and my husband and our little schnoodle will be going to London. It's been about 5 years coming. I've been getting a lot of consistent work in the UK, and I love it abroad. And it's one of those things where I thought, oh, maybe one day we'll relocate here for a little while and see how it goes. And we just kept putting it off. And I think, if the past wacky, year and a half has taught us anything, it's like you just got to go for it. And what have you got to lose, right? So we're diving in. I've got some exciting work coming up in the UK, so it's a good time to go. At least I'll be employed. And so we're finally making a big change. We'll probably be settled there as a family, and even renting our place out in New York by about the last week of January or so. We've got a little bit of time to properly say goodbye.
And I mean, in the world that was, you could travel back and forth casually between places, and we could go overseas and work for a little bit and come back. I was curious both how the pandemic might have affected trying to make an overseas move, but I also wondered if maybe it changed the math a little of, if I'm going to get periodic work in the UK, I should just live there rather than banking on what travel might or might not be.
Absolutely. That was a consideration. I can't say last year, my goodness. So 2019 into early 2020, I spent about 9 months collectively outside of the States and at least outside of New York in my home, always traveling, and so much of it was abroad. I think toward the end of the year, I was on end of July all the way through, March. I was only in New York for 1 week. In all of that time, I was in Scotland doing the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, England doing my UK tour, then rehearsing for this production of Funny Girl. That was a British production that then was performed in Paris. So then I lived in Paris. So it was quite an experience. I'd been traveling, of course, for years, but that was one of the longest stints I've ever been away from home and away from my family and my husband and my dog. I mean, my dog is definitely my fur baby, and you can tell your husband you miss him, but you certainly can't explain it to your dog. And I was just like, my gosh, this is just too much now. It's too much of them away. And so we did say to each other when I got back, I said to my husband, I was like, I don't want to do it like this anymore. If I'm going to spend this much time abroad, maybe we should make this move. And I knew I was going to be performing in this upcoming UK tour, The Rise and Fall of Little Voice. And it was supposed to be at the end of 2020. So we were beginning the plans for moving back then. So we had to put it off, of course, but definitely once the ramifications of what the pandemic was bringing hit, we thought, you know what, it's better to just be abroad because you just don't know what's going on in the world anymore. First, it used to be weather, just, traveling in the winter was
I
such a
hope no
complete,
volcano erupts.
particularly from New York, crazy. No, exactly. But, in my life, I've been one of my first traveling experiences abroad as I'd say a working professional. I was supposed to fly. We were flying out of Cape Town. I just performed with the cast of Forbidden Broadway in Cape Town, and there was a volcano erupted in Iceland, and we could not get back home. We had to stay in Cape Town for a while and fly around a million places. So I've already had a volcano disturb me once. Another time it was a fire, and of course now everyone's dealt with a pandemic. So if I could be more centrally located, that would be great. And right now, central to me means England and Europe. So we're going to do that for a little while.
And so I think I probably first came to know you through your diva YouTube videos and watching you just flip between voices at a yell. And it's just I can absolutely see why you would be perfect in little voice. And then of course I didn't realize that you did so many of the songs on Drag Race.
Oh yes.
And it just clicked immediately. Like, well, of course, God, that's genius. Can you talk a little bit about finding your niche in your career, both as a singer in your own voice, and then this impressions that almost lends itself to a cabaret performance or nearly something akin to stand-up, which I would think would be a little bit different muscle to flex than a Broadway musical.
It is. Yeah, thank you. So, gosh, I mean, I feel like I've said this a million times, so I'm trying to make it new and fresh and articulate for you and your listeners. I was always singing. I wanted to, first and foremost, even though I loved the performing arts, even as a little kid, I kind of knew I wanted to get up on stage and sing, dance, and act. Going back to when I was little, if I had to choose one thing, it was always singer, first and foremost. And I never just sang one style of music. Theater is the outlet that kids have. So, and when I was younger, it was sort of the only outlet. So I did grow up in a lot of musical theater and singing all of the musical movies, soundtracks. And I remember my mom always saying to me something like, don't sing it like the recording, sing it like you. And, looking back on it, I thought she meant just make it your own, like don't copy what the person is doing, vocally. But now looking back, she might have been serious because I have been told by my parents that I would inadvertently sing along and inadvertently sort of take on the tone and style of whoever I was listening to. So I had a natural ear for impressions always. And I guess I did that quite a bit, but I never took ownership of it. I never ran into a room being like, hey, Mama, here's my Judy Garland. I never did it to get a response. It was just something I did. And it wasn't until many years later that I realized not everybody could do it, and that it could actually maybe be an asset in some way or something unique that I could add to my, bag of tricks. So I was just performing, good old musical theater, and I did every show known to man. My parents took me to dance school and, all that stuff so I could perform. And then the older I got, the more I realized I really wanted to, make this my line of work. I just wanted to perform. But even at that age, listening to my parents, my father worked in radio. So that's how I had access to like all the different styles and genres of music. I just grew up listening to Edith Piaf one moment and like the Guess Who, classic rock the other, and then, Dolly Parton, Reba McEntire country. And I just always very eclectic. And I said to myself, like, I want to sing. So the more I can sing, the more opportunities there are for me. So even at a young age, I was, trying to sing with jazz trios, even in local restaurants and establishments my parents could take me to. As I got older in college, I sang in bar bands and did, the jingles and voiceovers, anything I could do that was musical. And I started working primarily in theater. But even when I wasn't working in theater, I made sure I was active and singing. Like I never had, quote unquote, a desk job or like a fallback job. I did double major in journalism at NYU, which I just wanted to do because I loved to write. And I thought, hey, it's so expensive to go here. I might get the most out of it. And that has proved really handy, just kind of knowing how how to, not on this interview perhaps, but how to give a soundbite, how to be succinct, and sort of what to do for interviews and all that. So I was just performing and doing my thing and just really grateful to be paying the bills, doing what I loved. And I remember I was doing, trying to think of what the main thing was. First of all, I had booked Dora the Explorer live. I was Dora, and I booked it right out of college, and I was like, oh man, a children's show. I don't know how this is going to be. And it was like the biggest, bestest thing, because it was the launch of this new tour, but was done by Clear Channel, Viacom, and Nickelodeon. And they gave me media training. They made sure I was on all these TV shows. We, played and sold out at the time and broke all the records for Radio City Music Hall. And it was just a great experience. And I was sort of thrust into a very different world of theater and showbiz, and kind of learning that angle of the biz. And one of the producers said at some big press event, like, well, she really does a great Dora the Explorer impression. And I was like, oh yeah, like when I make my voice sound like her. So, I mean, honestly, I had to be told I was doing impressions to sort of realize it could be anything. Yeah, I would do it over the phone. I would do it over the phone right now, but it's like, she's really loud, but it does those inflections, and when it's it's in the pattern, the inflection, and I could match it. And I didn't talk about that the whole show, otherwise the parents would have left screaming. But you choose those iconic moments, like, will you help us? And that the kids are going to respond because that's the way they hear it. So forgive my babbling, but it's basically that was the way I had to be told. You do an impression. So I'm going to cut a few years ahead, and I was working at my first and last production contract on a cruise ship, because it wasn't my cup of tea.
I've had some friends that have done that kind of gig, and you either really love that or you really don't.
Yeah, which is funny because now I go on, as a headliner very often, on and off the ship quickly and singing with the band. That's fantastic. But it wasn't really for me. And I knew it wasn't for me. And I was very bored. I always need to be doing something. I get antsy. And so every time there was downtime on the ship, which was a lot, I would sit in with the musicians. I would learn more music. I would go to the piano bar and sing with the other guy. And I would do all the variety shows. And not once in any of these variety shows did I choose to do any sort of impression. Not once. I got off that cruise ship and I said, you're not doing that again. You're going to hunker down, audition your butt off, and you're going to do some theater now because you miss being in shows. You're not going to do that again. And it's hysterical. The first thing I auditioned for was Forbidden Broadway. I saw, the breakdown in Backstage magazine, good old Backstage. And I did have an agent at the time, but it just, you go to the open calls and Backstage. And it said for future replacement. So I didn't think I was going to audition and immediately get a job. But for me, Forbidden Broadway was something I had grown up with. I mean, it was around before I was born. So I truly, came out of the womb listening to Forbidden Broadway. And I remember just thinking, gosh, these men and these women in the show, usually 2 men, 2 women, they're so super talented because they have to essentially sing all the parts in all of the Broadway shows in one evening. So how versatile and cool are these people? And I would listen to the cast albums and sing along, essentially impersonating the impersonators as I did. So I was familiar with the material. And it was about 2007 or 2008. And I saw this notice and I thought, it wouldn't be embarrassing if I can go. I know I change my voice well and I take direction well, and I know I can do some kind of like impressions, wouldn't be too bad. And I locked myself in my apartment, made a list of the impressions I could do. And I remember doing a couple for my mom over the phone, being like, Mom, does this sound like Bernadette Theaters to you? She'd be like, yeah. And I was like, really? She's like, yeah, you always did that. And I just I really was like the biggest walking idiot. I just had no idea that these impressions, they kind of just flew out of me naturally. So, again, this is supposed to be the short version. You hear me go? My Lord, we'll be here all day. But I went to the audition, just, waited outside, got my time slot, came back, total, regular way, nothing fancy. And I auditioned, and they were impressed with me, and they said, "Do you do any impressions?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, just go for it, say yeah." And I think I did Bernadette Peters, and I offered some Kristen Chenoweth because I knew that she was very popular. And then I could do this little thing with my voice. And as soon as I slipped into the Kristen Chenoweth voice, I saw their eyes light up. And I was like, oh, this is amazing, like to get a response for doing an impression. Got called back. And then I got a phone call that absolutely just changed my life. And the producer of the show, John Friesen, he called me and he said, we'd love for you to be in Forbidden Broadway and we'd like to put you directly in the next New York company. And that's pretty unheard of, that they put somebody they hadn't sort of tested on the road into the show. And he said, we want to put some new young blood in the show and we think you're great and we can't wait to have you be part of the family. And I know it's funny because in New York, it's an icon for people that know it. And for any of your listeners that don't, I didn't set it up well. It's a off-Broadway show, ran for about 30 years, and it lovingly spoofs and pokes fun at all of the Broadway shows and their stars. So that's why in it you could impersonate, a classic Broadway artist like Julie Andrews and Barbra Streisand, and then more contemporary ones like Idina Menzel and Kristen Chenoweth, all in one show. So for me, being in a big Broadway show, who wouldn't want that? But the history and the legacy of Forbidden Broadway and my growing up with it made that, like, if you had told me, oh, we're going to put you right immediately in the company of Wicked, I'd be like, oh, that's great. But if you put me in Forbidden Broadway, I was jumping up and down because to me it was like the be all end all show, and still is in so many ways. So, but that's the thing that really changed my life, because all of a sudden I was forced to do something that was a little bit out of my comfort zone, these impressions, in a room with people. There was no time for me to be scared. Like, I just had to go for it. And I was also watching people who've been doing it for years. So it was like a master class at the same time that I was doing it. I was interacting with people who were so skilled. It gave me a very quick education. And then it seemed like in no time at all, we were recording a cast album that, dear Lord, I listen to now. And I go, oh, I hate the way I sound. Didn't know those impressions yet, because I'd only been doing them a couple of, like 2 months. I didn't really know what I was doing yet. And then all of a sudden I was reviewed as an impressionist and said lovely things, thankfully, were said about me in publications like the New York Times. And all of a sudden I was getting phone calls to come around the city. Can you perform at this event, or can you do some impressions? And I thought, well, I can't do the Forbidden Broadway material for everything. It's very niche musical theater. I needed to find something that was more broad. And so that's when I sat down and went, okay, you sing, you put together shows, you put together sets, you know how to do this. So make a little, at first it was a short set, like, 3 songs or something like that. And then it was, okay, something longer. And eventually I made my own full length show, cabaret, concert, whatever you want to call it. I remember one of the first places I was asked to go sing was the Friars Club in New York City, the comedians' big hangout. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because you mentioned 5 hours ago, you mentioned stand-up comedy and impressions. And it's, see, I'll circle back. I'm Italian. I juggle a lot of things, but I'll get back to it. But it was that moment where I just thought, okay, how do I make this more mainstream? And I thought about, and I'm certainly not the first person to do this, and I'm going to give credit to it. Everyone's like, oh, we love your diva mashups. And it's like, well, you can thank, Sammy Davis Jr. for that. I mean, Sammy Davis Jr. has always been one of my biggest inspirations. I think he's just the greatest talent we ever had. And I remember being little and listening to one of his albums, and he did it a few times. He would take one song in the middle of one of his live concerts, and he would sing that one song as a bunch of his contemporaries and even other members of the Rat Pack that he was in. And I even said to my dad, like, is that him? And it's like, yeah, that's Sammy Davis Jr. changing his voice to sound like those other people. And even I would obsess over and then work with multiple times Christine Petty. Christine Petty, an incredible impressionist. And she posted some video on YouTube of her doing, a bunch of songs, a bunch of singers and doing one song. I think it was all these big divas singing And I'm Telling You. And so I thought, okay, I guess I could do something like a Sammy and a Christine Petty here for the Friars Club. And it's this video. I mean, it's shot like heck. I don't know what I'm doing, but it's me doing The Sun Will Come Out Tomorrow as a bunch of different celebrities. And I posted it just thinking, oh, this is what you do. You do something and you put it on YouTube. How cool. It's sort of to show my parents what I did that night at the Friars Club, not expecting anybody to watch it. And I remember over the next couple of weeks, even, not even months, watching the view count on that YouTube video really grow, and looking at the analytics and seeing a lot of it was coming from Europe and Australia. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. Then the Forbidden Broadway album came out, and everybody just wanted me to do more and more sets around town. And that's where I had to sort of change my sensibility because, like you said, I was trained in musical theater, and I went to NYU, School of the Arts for it, blah, blah, blah. But that's where, like, the Dora the Explorer, media training, not just singing theater, but also singing in nightclubs and all that stuff. It all helped me find a way to perform that was although I'm being other people for a lot of it, kind of uniquely me, and it was malleable, moldable to different audiences, which is one of the reasons that I have been lucky enough to travel all around, doing shows on cruise ships to people who sit down and they don't really know who you are. They're just saying, entertain me, to people that choose to buy a ticket to come see me in a nightclub in New York, people that come see me do a little set, even though it's not stand-up comedy, at a comedy club, and then people who buy a ticket to come see me at a symphony. So you have to address the audience and do your material differently. But I tried to put something together that was more broad, and I always found the greatest joy in sort of the ridiculous. Like, yes, it's great to hear a Celine Dion impersonator sing a Celine Dion song, but wouldn't it be funnier if she was singing Rodgers and Hammerstein, or Christina Aguilera was singing a Julie Andrews song, or et cetera, et cetera. And so I started playing with this and posting more videos on YouTube. And some of those videos that I posted on YouTube were absolutely the first time I ever did any of that material, or was just working it out for the first time, like this Total Eclipse of the Heart video that posted that went super viral, got me on the Ellen DeGeneres show and a million other TV shows. And it wasn't just the fact that the video went viral, because if you look at the numbers today, my gosh, it's nothing. My view count is nothing compared to what these kids get today. One, that has to do with the way YouTube has grown, but also it wasn't really the number of views I got. It was the fact that the media picked it up in the way that it did. Because there are so many people out there today with so many more followers and views than me, but people still remember my name and associate me with that sort of genre of impression comedy and the diva mashup.
Yeah, the folks that saw you on Today aren't necessarily YouTube viewers.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's all about the timing. And then later, working with YouTube on a few projects, they said, you started this impression trend. So you can thank me for all the little kids out there doing the the Disney impressions and all of that stuff. And, even gosh, I mean, I'm not that old, but you couldn't do it all yourself at home on your computer with your little plug-in USB microphone like you could today. Yeah. So I think I just tapped on something when nobody was known for doing it. Like I said, I didn't invent it. I just did it with a fresh take for a fresh audience that had never seen it before. Because those kids out there only know impressions from stand-up comedy or sketch comedy shows like Saturday Night Live. They very rarely heard it in song. So it changed everything for me. I mean, please edit this down. I'm talking so much, my goodness. But it was a weird path, but all of my training, all of my musical theater training, putting together a show and like sets and then a bigger set and then a show early on is absolutely what helped me when the YouTube videos took off and I was on all these TV shows and the phone rang from people all over the world being like, hey, so do you have a show? Like, could you come perform? Like, yes, I do. Here's my press kit. This is sort of material I do. And I can also cut this and make it, different for an Australian audience. And most people that get popular on YouTube can't do that. You can't book Charlie Bit My Finger. Yeah. So,
they weren't ready to be famous at all. Yeah. Or ready to have success. There's a lot to be said for, I think a lot of creative jobs have this feeling where you've prepped all your stuff that no one wants to see or hear. And you just have to keep it ready. Because suddenly someone will ask 100%. And you have to be able to go out to the trunk of your car and get your paintings or go send them a script or sing, right then.
100% true. And it definitely, I took time, I took some money and I invested in myself on this thing. I said, when do you get opportunities like this? You got to be ready. And so I worked, I will say, I definitely, looking back on it, I'm so glad that I worked hard when I had that moment, because then when the momentum hit, I was able to take advantage of it. So it's been a crazy ride. And again, it's, I don't consider myself like a YouTuber because I don't really make content. Well, now, of course, I've over the years have made some video content exclusively for YouTube and trying to stretch what I do and stretch the way that I entertain, and also add a little bit more of me as an actor to it, more of the sort of sketch comedy approach, like Midge Maisel starring in Good Will Hunting, these things that are impressions that are mismatched, but not singing all the time. Yeah. So I pushed myself to do that, but I would never consider myself a YouTuber because every video that I made that went viral was me performing live just for an audience. Like, I'm a live performer. So, and particularly, gosh, over the pandemic, I just forced myself to find a way to make it more digital And I'm actually quite proud of a lot of the videos my husband and I put together, rocking the green screens and investing in a couple extra lights and making a little tiny film studio in our studio apartment. But again, I'm always trying to grow. And in some ways, it's, everyone knows I do impressions. So many more people are doing impressions these days. I'm no longer the only person doing it, In fact, I'm on I remember the kids on TikTok. Yes, I joined TikTok. And after I'd said no a million times, I actually tried it once, dropped it. And over the pandemic, I thought, well, what the heck? If you're not going to do it now, when are you going to do it? So I got on, and I always get comments like, I saw somebody do this once. And you're like, yeah, it was me.
I did that.
It was me. It was just, you were a toddler, but it was me,
Ask your parents, that was me.
And it's really funny but so, I'm actually finding that I can take content that I did in, 2014 and put, a minute of it, 30 seconds even of it on TikTok. And it's like these kids have never seen it before. So it's reaching a different audience with that. So for everything that I sort of rehash, I always tell myself, well, now you have to do something exclusively for TikTok. So I push myself in that way, kind of reliving the old stuff and seeing what hits with an audience today. And then I say old, like I'm 60 or something. I'm in my 30s, but it just makes you feel like so old when you're on TikTok with these little kids.
I feel absolutely ancient looking at it, but it is where most of my favorite music mashups have come lately. I remember being amazed when I'm over 40, so I remember seeing Green Day come out in high school for me, and get kind of made fun of or bagged on for singing in this sort of faux British accent, because that's what sounded like real punk to Green Day. And I remember being struck by it and kind of having an embarrassment moment of realizing that if I were to sing a song out loud as a kid, I would try to sing like the person's voice. To me, Rod Stewart's sound in his voice or Geddy Lee's sound in his voice was as important as the tone of George Harrison's guitar. Like you wouldn't plug in the wrong amps and such and try to pass it off as sounding like the Beatles any more than, that Liverpool accent. Like that's right. That's somehow correct in it. And realize that, oh wow, have I been doing a weird impression half the time? So I loved hearing that you were kind of in your zone of genius and other people had to like, hey, that's not just part of the music for everybody. That's
absolutely. And I have 15 thoughts from what you just said, because very often that's why, quote unquote, making a song your own is so difficult. Even when you get away from impressions, true impressions, meaning like someone singing a song and sort of doing a voice like Rod Stewart without realizing it. I mean, Elton John, anybody else singing his material is so weird. His voice is so unique. And when I teach and coach master classes, which I did a lot of master classes and workshops online during the pandemic, students very often start to sing things immediately like the recording, and particularly the high kind of musical theater of today. And everybody has a very similar sound. I'm not saying it's a terrible thing. I'm not trying to bash contemporary musical theater, but most of the people out there today have a very similar musical theater forward Broadway sound, And I kept saying to them, I said, think of the Broadway stars whose names you know. Barbara Streisand, if she's only done a few Broadway shows, but we know it from that. Bernadette Peters, Patti LuPone. Do you sound like these people today sound like them? No, they became stars because they had something unique about their voice. Liza Minnelli, Judy Garland. These people don't sound cookie cutter. The reason I can impersonate them is they have little isms and hooks and things that make them unique and distinct. And so very often, and that's a whole other conversation, is why I had a hard time working in musical theater. Not only am I 4'11", which is just too short to exist in the theater, unless you're Kristen Chenoweth.
I was about to say,
and very few exceptions are made.
It's got to make your Kristen Chenoweth impression just that much better. I mean, to go to all the trouble of losing an entire foot of height, just to pull off the impression is.
I'm amazing. What can I tell you? I put myself on a stretcher to do Celine Dion. It's a lot of work, but it's just one of those things where these people have these unique sounds, and those are the stars I think that really have staying power. So I'm always telling these kids, my mom said to me, like, don't try to make your voice sound like the recording. You have a more naturally deep voice. Why don't you use that? Let's support your breath differently, and let's try to find you within it. And it sounds a little cheesy, but I think one of the reasons that my impressions have worked, meaning worked for the duration of the years that I've been doing it, worked for a show. When someone sit down and they watch a show and they continue, you have to fill 2 sets of material, so you can't do the same thing over and over again. I think one of the reasons it works is because everybody knows watching me, at least I hope they know, that imitation to me is the sincerest form of flattery. It's done with respect and love. Otherwise, it's not going to last. You can do a quick little funny impression. You do have to exaggerate. You do have to sometimes heighten, which can look like you're making fun of somebody. But it's all got to come from a place of respect and some sort of admiration for who they are and what they do. Because I think it's not lasting if you do something, even with just a little bit of malice or a little bit of a twinkle of mischief in your eye. I don't think you can continue on, build on it.
What makes us so much more sensitive to that in singing, I feel like, than say if someone were to step up and plug in a guitar and play as exactly like Stevie Ray Vaughan as possible, everyone would go, "My God, that's amazing! You sounded exactly." I don't think anyone would think that they were mocking Stevie Ray. But there's something about, I don't know why, I feel like we get a little more defensive or are looking for. Are you making fun of me? Something about
it's true.
For the singing voice, and
even with speaking impressions, like I said, comedians do it all the time, and they do it in a way that's supposed to make you laugh, right? Mm-hmm. Very few people are given the outlet. Some serious actors are, but very few people are given an outlet to do impressions in a way that's not supposed to make you laugh. It's supposed to make you go, wow, or ah, that. And so I always say my shows are a mix between, gosh, I'm going to get it wrong now, but it's like you can combine a Bette Midler concert with like a little bit of the Sammy Davis Jr. bit and a little bit of an SNL sketch and a little bit of, like, my concerts are a mixed bag where I can stand center stage and sing something very dramatic in my own voice. Mm-hmm. And the next bit is Liza Minnelli singing Livin' La Vida Loca. And it's that balance of, one, showing them who I am so they know me better. So yes, it does help them better appreciate how I'm changing my voice and do the impressions, but it makes me human. And I always, even if I'm just briefly talking about an artist before I go into an impression, it shows my relationship with them, how I see them, what I like, And yeah, I mean, so I've always kind of pushed the envelope when it comes to that sort of thing. And I did it in an audition room. And that's why, being, like I said, being 4'11" and being versatile as a vocalist, I wasn't cookie cutter. I didn't fit a box. And so I didn't get a lot of jobs. Oh, I was versatile and they all loved my voice. And I'm grateful for the fact that people knew that and thought that and called me into rooms. But I didn't get the job because I never fit a box. And it's funny that now I've created my own box, my individual box, by being a lot of other people. But again, it's something that I've always tried to make sure everyone sees me throughout all of it.
Well, that made any sense. I think it's important you've got to give the audience a looks to reassure them that, no, this person at the center of this, where are they mocking this or are they respecting this? I need to know what lane we're in, and then I'm safe to go with you.
Yeah, I agree. And I've got this incredible opportunity ever since I was, I think I was in junior high, when my father said, "Hey, Christina, you know that TV show you watch, Absolutely Fabulous?" Because I've always been an Anglophile. There's an actress on that's part of this big play that was turned into a movie. It's called Little Voice. And I'm going to get up in the video store. I heard it was great. She does all these impressions. So I won't go crazy and give the entire plot summary to your listeners, but The Rise and Fall of Little Voice is a play that was written for this incredible actress and also impressionist, Jane Horrocks, who people who watch Absolutely Fabulous, AbFab, she plays Bubble. Incredible voice artist, really funny, really wacky, but this is a serious, I'd call it a dramedy. It won the Olivier Award for Best Comedy, but I still think it's more of a drama, so dramedy in my opinion. And it's a play in which a young girl sort of mourns the loss of her father by tending to and listening to his record collection that they used to listen to all the time of his favorite musical divas. And so she tends to them and kind of obsesses over them in a little bit of an unhealthy way for so long that she naturally develops impressions of them. So in the show, this very serious show, she is singing impressions of Marilyn Monroe, Shirley Bassey, Judy Garland, Edith Piaf, and of course, people in her world hear this and then try to find a way to exploit it to make money off of what she can do. That's the shortest, weirdest description of Little Voice you'll ever hear. But in that show, her impressions are done, and people are supposed to be stunned, not laughing.
Yes.
And so for me now to finally get to do that show at the end of, after this pandemic and the last musical I did, I was lucky enough to do all in my own voice, playing Fanny Bryce and Funny Girl, like the biggest, loudest, and a role that goes as a complete emotional roller coaster, from slapstick comedy to falling down in tears and, crying. I mean, it's
such
amazing.
a history to it that it benefited to reinforce that in your voice and not accidentally do a Streisand impression.
That's it. And I had to go out of my way to completely take Streisand away, which is so hard because I grew up listening to her and, of course, watching the film. Yeah, exactly. You got to go as far in the opposite direction as possible. So to have done that, which was so important after so long of touring and doing all these shows with impressions, even the last big musical I did prior to that, a couple of years before, was this production of Joseph, where I did half of my own voice, half impressions, which you'll have to look up because it was very loved and very hated, but most people loved it, and it was amazing. It was a really cool production at the Drury Lane Theater in Chicago. But I thought, oh gosh, to finally get to be myself again feels so right, and I'm so grateful. The show was well received, and my performance was well received, and then I was supposed to go right into Little Voice. And at first I was like, oh man, it's going to be so weird going into impressions again. But the thing is, it's a very different approach for this show because, like I said, it's serious. The person who's doing the impressions does not have any sort of natural. She's not an extrovert. She's a total introvert.
Yeah. She's not trying to perform.
Do the impression.
It's the only way she can communicate, almost. Yeah.
Exactly right. So it's the only way she can express anything. It's where she lets all of her emotions out is by doing those impressions.
And as you can see, vibe to it.
Yeah, you've got it. And as you can hear and see, it's going to be the hardest role I've ever played, like harder than Fanny Bryce, who never left the stage, because I have to sit still and be quiet for most of the show, and then come out and do these big performances. Yeah, but still in a way that she would, not that I would. So it's a really interesting thing, but I can't tell you how much I'm looking forward to doing impressions, although I'll always love making people laugh, but to have the other side of it and more of that, hopefully make them say, wow, or transport them a little bit so they feel like they were in the room when Judy Garland was singing. I mean, that's going to be very different for me, and I'm so grateful for that opportunity.
Now, of course, before you go do that, you're going to, it looks like, give New York a couple of nights of all of the go ahead and laugh impressions that they want to see. I'm assuming a lot to unpack is going to be more similar to your impression cabaret style shows. It will,
but I will say it's definitely going to have a little more of Christina as well. I'd say it's about 50-50.
And is it a goodbye show, or is it just an opportunity?
Well, I'm calling it my little farewell shows. But goodbye for now is a better way to say it, because I'm not becoming a British citizen on this trip. I'm moving there for probably at least 3 years. So, but it's I used to roll in pre-pandemic whenever I was in town and not traveling. Birdland's been my musical home. It's where I did my first solo concerts in New York City. But you go in there on a Monday night and you go see a show and do Jim Caruso's cast party and sing, and you never know who's going to show up. Big Broadway stars, TV stars, or just somebody off the street who said, I'm in from Wisconsin, and sings the greatest thing you've ever heard. I mean, so it's a real special community, particularly the New York nightclub, cabaret, jazz community, and it just feels so weird to not have that at my fingertips, So I'm very excited and anxious, as one would be, about moving. London is one of my favorite places, and having worked there so much over the past 8 years, we have so many friends there and people that are now new family to us. But what I don't have are those real long-term relationships with people, and particularly at venues like at Birdland. So yeah, it's got to be I have to call it a little bit of a farewell show, because I can't tell you the next time I'm going to be back doing one. where usually I can. Every year you can expect 1 or 2 shows from me there. So I'm gonna be a little silly and a little sweet because, particularly after everything we've been through, I want to make everybody laugh. I don't want to make it this maudlin affair and like, oh yes, I've just come from Paris and now we have this depressing thing and now I'm going to leave you again. Nobody wants that.
It's too sad. Here I'm out.
But I mean, I did do Funny Girl, and before it comes to Broadway, with a whole the production comes to Broadway, I'm not going to be allowed to sing that material much any after that. They're going to be like, who do you think you are? Get over it. You played it 2 years ago. So I'm going to get some more Funny Girl songs in, maybe some of the ones that people don't know as well. I'm going to sing some songs that I love in my own voice and some more jazzy arrangements also to honor Birdland as a fabulous, iconic jazz club. And although you don't have to do that there, I always have. I mean, I'm such an old soul in my heart. I mean, give me some Keely Smith, some Stephen Eady, it's my favorite stuff. So we're going to throw a little bit of that in. But there will be a very special segment that will be a little extra silly from what people know. I had a little video series that I did to raise money during Pride Month, and I called it Who's in the Box, because I have a bunch of wig boxes in my house, and I would pull a wig out and see how many impressions I could kind of think of with that particular wig. And I would do them in about a minute for an Instagram post. And so I'm definitely going to have, I should just say, there will be a wig in a box segment in the show. So that will give everybody what they were expecting there as well. So a little me, a little bit of the divas and the impressions. And it's just a real celebration of home. And I know everyone's coming and being so supportive, but my husband, who's so creative and such a talented performer himself, one of the big surprises is I'm going to get him out to do something with me. So that'll be really nice too.
Well, folks can see that October 15th and 16th, Friday and Saturday at Birdland. And I'll put a link as well if folks are around.
Great, thank you.
And I think you're just going to be absolutely amazing in your UK endeavor. And I can't wait to see what you do.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks so much for
appreciate it.
letting me take up so much of your time today. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for spreading the word. Hope to see everybody at the show.
Have a great rest of your day.
TV Dudes is an independently run podcast out of Austin, Texas. We are exclusively listener supported. If you'd like to help us out, go to patreon.com/TVDudes.
You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at TV Dudes. All the music for our show is done by our friend and original TV Dude, Gregory J. Amani Smith.
To find out more about us, go to thetvdudes.com. I'm Randy Lander.
I'm Les Weiler.
And I'm Kyle Scott.
Thanks for listening.